The wind on Rapa Nui doesn't just blow, it howls. It's a relentless, salt-heavy gale that has spent the last 1,000 years trying to scrub a tiny speck of volcanic rock clean off the map. This is the most isolated inhabited place on the planet. To the east, South America is 2,000 miles away. To the west, the nearest tiny island is 1,000 miles of empty, churning blue. And yet, standing in the teeth of that wind are the giants, nearly 900 of them. Massive, heavy-browed, and impossibly silent. For centuries, the Moai have been the ultimate Rorschach test for humanity. Explorers saw them as idols of a forgotten religion. Early archaeologists saw them as the ego-driven projects of a warrior class. For decades, we've asked the same two questions. How did they move them? And why did they stop? But we were asking the wrong questions. We were looking at the statues, but we weren't looking at their faces. Not really. Recently, a team of researchers, utilizing everything from LiDAR to chemical soil mapping and paleohydrology, finally decoded what these faces were actually looking at. And what they found isn't just a breakthrough in archaeology. It's a chilling warning sent through time. A message from a civilization that realized, far too late, that they had built their own coffin. You've seen the photos. You think you know Easter Island. But what lies beneath the surface, literally and figuratively, is a story of survival that turned into a nightmare. And no, you don't have to replay that part. It really happened. This is the real reason the Moai were carved, and the terrifying truth about what they were trying to tell us. And to understand the faces, you have to understand the prison, because that's what Rapa Nui is. Imagine you're a Polynesian voyager around 1200 AD. You've been on a double-hulled canoe for weeks. You find this island. It's a paradise. Thick forests of giant palms, lush soil, and nesting seabirds so thick you can catch them by hand. It was a land of plenty, but it was also a trap. Once you land here, there is no going back. The wood needed to build ocean-going vessels doesn't grow back fast enough if you cut it all down. For 500 years, the Rapa Nui people flourished in total isolation. They weren't just tribespeople. They were master engineers and complex social organizers. But as the population grew, the island began to shrink. Not in size, but in resources. And that's when the faces started appearing. The Moai aren't just heads. If you've been keeping up with the news over the last few years, you'll know that famous digging photo that went viral. The one showing that the heads have massive buried bodies. Some of them are 30 feet tall. They have hands carved onto their bellies, and on their backs there are intricate petroglyphs, symbols of the sun, the moon, and strange bird-like deities. But why bury them? Or rather, why were they covered? For a long time, the narrative was ecocide, the theory popularized by Jared Diamond. The islanders cut down every tree to move the statues. The soil washed away. They starved. They turned to cannibalism, and they toppled their own gods in a fit of rage. It's a neat, tidy moral lesson for the modern world. The only problem? It's mostly wrong. And new evidence suggests the Rapa Nui didn't just mindlessly destroy their environment. They were actually incredibly clever. They practiced rock mulching, literally moving millions of volcanic rocks to cover the soil, to keep it moist and fertile. They were fighting for every scrap of food. So, if they weren't mindless environmental vandals, why did they spend millions of man-hours carving stones that weigh 80 tons? The answer was hidden in the placement. If you map the island today, the Moai seem scattered randomly. But when scientists overlaid a map of the island's geology with the locations of the ahu, the stone platforms the Moai stand on, they saw a pattern. It wasn't about the sea, it wasn't about the stars, it was about the one thing no human can live without for more than 3 days. Rapa Nui has no permanent streams, no rivers, no Grand Lakes. When it rains, the water vanishes into the porous volcanic rock like a sponge. It stays there, hidden in underground aquifers, and slowly seeps out at the shoreline. This is called coastal seafloor groundwater discharge. Essentially, at low tide, fresh water bubbles up through the sand right at the edge of the salt ocean. It's brackish, it's slightly salty, but it's drinkable. A team led by Dr. Carl Lippo found that the ahu, the statues, are located with surgical precision exactly where these freshwater seeps occur. Think about that. The Moai aren't just ancestors. They are high-visibility markers for the most precious resource on the island. In a world where there is no map, the giant face tells you, drink here, this is life. But this is where it starts to get chilling. Because as the climate shifted, as the Little Ice Age hit in the 1500s, the rainfall patterns changed. The aquifers began to dry up. The seeps at the coast became rarer, and as the water vanished, the faces changed. If you look at the Moai chronologically, the early ones are smaller, more human. They look peaceful. But as time goes on, the statues get bigger. Their features become more exaggerated. The brows become deeper, the noses sharper, the expressions more severe. It was an arms race of stone. The Rapa Nui believed the Moai projected mana, a spiritual power that protected the community and ensured fertility. As the environment collapsed, they didn't stop building, they doubled down. They believed that if they built a bigger statue, a taller sentinel, it would force the water to return. Imagine the scene, a starving, a thirsty population, their forests gone, their soil failing, spending their last remaining calories dragging an 80-ton giant across miles of jagged rock, hoping that this one, this final, massive face, would be the one to appease the gods of the rain. They weren't just carving art, they were carving a scream. But there's another layer to this, the eyes. When you see a Moai today, they look like blind giants, just deep, empty sockets. For a long time, we thought that was the design. Then, in 1978, an archaeologist named Sonia Hauer found something in the sand. It was a fragment of white coral and a disc of red scoria. When she placed it into the eye socket of a fallen Moai, the statue woke up. The Moai originally had eyes, brilliant, white coral whites, and deep red or black pupils. When the eyes were placed into the sockets, and the statue became the living face of an ancestor, it wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was a physical presence that could see you. Scientists have recently used digital reconstruction to see what the island would have looked like when all the Moai were awake. And the result is unsettling. The Moai don't look out at the ocean. They never did. They look inward. They stare at the villages. If you lived in a village on Rapa Nui in 1600, you were constantly under the gaze of dozens of 30-foot-tall, white-eyed giants. They were watching you eat. They were watching you sleep. They were watching you use the very last of the resources. The chilling revelation here is the social control. As the island's resources dwindled, the society became more obsessed with surveillance. The Moai weren't just markers for water, and they were the big brother of the Neolithic world. They were a tool of a priestly class used to keep a starving population in check. The ancestors are watching, they would say. The ancestors see you taking more than your share of the water. But the ancestors couldn't stop the drought, and that's when the Birdman cult began. This was a radical shift in their society. They stopped carving Moai. They stopped looking to the ancestors. They turned to a new, more violent ritual. Every year, men would climb down the sheer cliffs of the Ranokau volcano, swim through shark-infested waters to a tiny islet, and wait for the first egg of the sooty tern. The first one to bring back an intact egg became the Birdman for the year, and his clan got control over the island's remaining resources. It was the Hunger Games of the 17th century, and the Moai were left where they stood, Some were abandoned in the quarry, half-carved. Some were left in the middle of the road. The living faces were pushed over. Their coral eyes were ground into the dust. The transition wasn't peaceful. It was a collapse of a worldview. While the faces tell a story of desperation, the bodies, those buried torsos, reveal something even more specific. Using multispectral imaging, researchers have begun to look at the faint, weathered carvings on the backs of the statues that aren't visible to the naked eye. These aren't just decorations. They are a record of a changing atmosphere. They found carvings of European-style ships. Think about the timeline. The Dutch discovered Easter Island on Easter Sunday, 1722. By then, the Moai culture was already in its death throes. But the Rapa Nui had already seen the ships. They had seen the floating islands of the outsiders. The decoding of these symbols suggests that the Rapa Nui were trying to incorporate the power of these newcomers into their own failing system. They were desperate for a way out. But the most chilling part of the decoding involves the Rongo script. Easter Island is one of the few places on Earth where a written language developed independently. It's a series of beautiful glyph-like symbols carved into wooden tablets. To this day, it has never been fully deciphered. Why? Because within a generation of European contact, everyone who could read it was dead. In the 1860s, Peruvian slave raiders arrived. They kidnapped half the population, and including the king and the priestly class, the only ones who knew the secrets of the Moai and the script. When a few survivors were finally returned, they brought smallpox with them. The population plummeted from thousands to just 111 people. The decoding of the Moai faces isn't just about water or eyes. It's about the silence that followed. The statues were left standing, but the operating manual for the civilization was deleted. When scientists look at the Moai now, they see a failed state in stone. They see a people who did everything right. They mulched the soil. They mapped the water. They built incredible monuments to social cohesion, and they were still destroyed by factors beyond their control. Climate change and the arrival of a globalized world they weren't prepared for. So, what is the chilling truth? It's not that the Rapa Nui were foolish. It's that they were us. We like to look at ancient mysteries as something other, something primitive. We think we would never do that. We wouldn't build giant statues while the world burns. But look around. We have our own Moai. We have our own massive, resource-heavy systems that we refuse to let go of, even as the aquifers of our modern world, oil, stable climate, biodiversity, begin to dry up. The Moai faces are chilling because they represent the moment a civilization realizes its gods can't save it. There is one statue, known as Tukuturi. It's different from all the others. It's smaller, it's kneeling, and it has a beard. It looks more human, more vulnerable. It's located at the quarry, looking up at the volcano where all the other giants were born. Archaeologists believe this was one of the last ones ever made. It's not a proud ancestor, it's a witness. The Moai don't just reveal where the water was. They reveal what happens to a human heart when it is trapped on a small island in a vast dark ocean. Today, Rapa Nui is a tourist destination. People take selfies with the giants. They marvel at the mystery. But the next time you see one of those heavy-browed faces, look at the eyes, or where the eyes used to be. They aren't looking at the past. They are looking at us. And they are waiting to see if we've decoded the message yet. Because the wind on Rapa Nui is still blowing, and the ocean is still rising, and the statues are still silent. But for the first time in 1,000 years, we finally know why they were screaming. And the question is, are we going to wait until our own eyes are ground into the dust before we start listening?